So this evening I wanted to talk about, I've got two texts about Zen freedom, whatever Zen freedom is. One is written by two American academics, and it comes from a kind of literary reading, and the other one is by Alan Watts. And they both kind of coincide, but they're interesting. But the academic one, you may have to help me out, because I can't quite unlock it, what these guys are talking about. But the academic one starts with the sentence, and maybe you... Zen freedom is dependent upon the character of constraint, and vice versa. Zen freedom is dependent upon the character of constraint, and vice versa. Reading Zen well requires close attention to both. Changes in one co-arise with changes in the other. Can you make any sense of that?
Skillful means.
What do you see? What sorry, somebody.
Skillful means, I think.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's right. Bottom line, that's what they're saying. Yeah, but the same Zen freedom is dependent upon one on constraint, and two on the opposite of constraint, vice versa. I'm being free. I'm being unconstrained. Sorry. And he says that you have to pay close attention to both, because changes in one co-arise with changes in the other. So I think what they seem to be saying is that if you exercise constraint, actually that puts you in a position or a place or a way of thinking that allows you to be unconstrained. Whereas if you're just constrained all the time, so isn't there a phrase about freedom coming out of constraint? I don't think it's to do with Bob Dylan, is it? Freedom's not another word for nothing
left to lose.
But nothing else to lose. I don't think it's to do with that one. But I think it's to do with when we talk about voluntary limitation, when we voluntarily limit ourselves. So when we do a session, we choose voluntarily to limit ourselves, and out of that voluntary limitation comes a greater ability to express freedom. I think that's, for me, that's what they're saying. But if anybody thinks, okay, he then goes on to say, because the whole chapter, this constraint and lack of constraint, is about negation. The negation thing they have in Zen. It's not this, it's not that. It's not this or that. It's not this or that. So you just keep going, so you run out of things. So he says, this act of overcoming through negation is not the same as familiar religious structures through which the negative, evil, is overcome in its cancellation by the good. So I think we all recognise that, don't we? That in traditional religion, negation comes by overcoming evil in order to experience good. What distinguishes the act of negation in Zen is the extent to which it consists in an effort to break through the existing framework within which good and evil are being dichotomized in the first place. So he's saying we're not trying to put one against the other, we're trying to get at the very root of the fact that we've created this duality in the first place. So he says the following two passages, it's a traditional sutra, I can't pronounce the name. The character of this effort to overcome duality through the posture of non-grasping is outlined. And this is really interesting. What is liberation of mind and liberation in all places? The Master said, don't seek Buddha, don't seek Dharma, and don't seek Sangha. Don't seek virtue, don't seek knowledge, and don't seek intellectual understanding. When sensations of defilement and purity are abolished through non-seeking, Don't hold on to this non-seeking and consider it correct. Do not dwell at the point of ending, and do not long for heavens or fear of hells. When you are unhindered by bondage and freedom, then this is called liberation of mind and body in all places. When the mind of purity and impurity is ended, it does not dwell in bondage, nor does it dwell in liberation. It has no mindfulness of doing, non-doing, bondage or liberation. Then, although it remains in the world of samsara, that mind is free. Does anybody that resonate for anyone? Make any sense? Should I read it? I'm not going to read it again, am I? No, you don't need to read it again.
Yes, I think I'm looking for a simple explanation.
Simple, yeah. Well, I think this is really simple. It's saying if you're attached to anything whatsoever, even to non-attachment.
I have a simple
Okay.
solution.
Go on.
Constraint is faith.
Constraint is faith. Yeah, that's good. That's a nice thing to say. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we have to exercise faith to be constrained. Yeah, yeah.
So may I share a story from Master Sungsan?
You have to say it louder though.
Okay.
Well, if you don't say it louder, they'll come behind you with a poisoned cloth, and you're going to be dead.
Typical of Master Sungsan's witticism, he once told a story where there was a man on a bus who made a right rocker saying, "I'm free, I'm free, I'm free," and he kept shouting at the top of his lung. So another person quietly approached him and punched him across his face. And he said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm free to punch your face."
Yeah, okay.
So in this case, I think the person who was shouting at the top of his lung, "I'm free," was attached to freedom and non-constraint.
Yeah.
And that really isn't, as the academic was asserting,
Isn't
not
it?
the
Yeah.
freedom. Or alternatively, only when there is constraint, there is freedom.
Yeah. Thank you. The person also quotes, and I'm not going to talk about it, but it's quite like, I like the kind of, no wonder we get afraid of the idea of Zen freedom, because he quotes from Wang Po. Wang Po says, "The experience of freedom is like being suspended over an infinite chasm with nothing to hold on to." And then he goes on to say, "No wonder people get scared." Yeah. The moment of liberation is letting go with both hands, like leaping off a 100-foot pole. You all know that one. Okay, so that's the academic thing, you know, it kind of basically boils down to be attached to anything, and even to be attached to these very words is a lack of freedom. Where freedom comes from. Okay, so now the more easy to understand Alan Watts' description of freedom. So he says, "Release from our own isolating ego comes partly from recognizing our own hunger for freedom to experience our own intrinsically free nature. However, hunger does not imply huge effort. Using our ego to survive is like trying to swim without relying on the water, trying to stay afloat by pulling on our own legs. Your body becomes tense. Swimming requires a relaxation, a trust in the power of flotation. Spiritual life, in the same way, we need to trust in the great life, in the flow of things." And then he goes on, "All will be well, and all manner of things will be well." There is some perverse determination, some self-regarding romantic picture of our own heroic efforts. We imagine this long journey of spiritual progress culminating in the giddy heights of enlightenment. In so doing, we miss the obvious. So anybody on a romantic spiritual journey toward the giddy heights of enlightenment. Hope so. You don't knock it. Our nature is not mean to us. It's self-revelation. No, our nature is not mean to us in its self-revelation. It does all it can to bring itself to our consciousness. It is here right now before our very eyes. In this very moment, we are manifesting our Buddha nature. However, we are complex and make it hard to accept. To experience our true nature, we have to simplify our lives so that it has a chance to be experienced. Buddha nature is itself the awareness we have of ourselves. Buddha nature is itself the awareness we have of ourselves. The ego striving to attain this divine Satori state by its own efforts falls into despair. Suddenly, it can dawn on us with a great illuminative shock, the realization that the divine state is here and now in your very life. Nirvana does not have to be attained, it has to be realized. So, we always come back to this. If this is it, if this really is it, can you bear it?
What is it?
Pardon?
What is it?
Yeah. Well, if your very nature now is whatever it is, and whatever we want to call it, we call it Buddha nature or God or the not knowing or a giving, or I don't know what it is.
It's just something.
It's happening now. In our conversation.
You already are bearing it whether you want to or not, I suppose.
Pardon?
You already are bearing it whether you
whether you want to or not, yeah. But both of them, although one was academic, both are saying the same thing, basically. That, well, actually, I think, for me, and to tell me what you think, I think the academic perception is more realistic than Alan Watts, which may be different than how you experience it. I mean, Alan Watts is saying basically just relax. But that's like, telling somebody who's tense to relax. Doesn't work, does it? You just get more tense because you fail so much at relaxing that you get more tense.
And yet we manage it when we're swimming.
We manage it when we're swimming, yeah. Yeah. But it's like riding a bike, isn't it? To begin with.
Yeah.
Somebody has to hold you until you really know that you're not going to sink.
Yeah.
And if you stop and think about what you're doing, then it all goes wrong.
And as soon as you think about particularly on a bike, as a child starts to worry they're going to fall off, they fall off.
Yeah.
And engaging with your life, from that sort of ongoing realization perspective, you've got to make some effort.
Yeah.
It's like with any kind of practice of anything, you've got to make some effort until it becomes a part of your life, and so then you forget the effort and you just
do it. Yeah. So Alan Watts seemed. I mean, that was that. I mean, it's of my time and Morris's time. So Alan Watts. I mean, people of my age, anybody over 60, Alan Watts was probably their introduction to Zen practice. That's the only guy we read, and Suzuki. Alan Watts and Suzuki. And Alan Watts had a reputation for being a playboy. He used to go to the opera with Christmas Humphreys wearing they would wear colourful capes and have canes and go to the opera together and drink champagne before they went in. And were considered to be very bad Buddhists for doing that, and Alan Watts then moved to America and became an Episcopalian priest. And then became a kind of hippie. So his perspective is very much about, just smoke a joint and hang out and you'll be fine.
Sensei, I was thinking about freedom, and from my experience of working with prisoners, it's really interesting because when I look at their behaviour, I can see that in prison they become more free almost, because they become naturally compassionate to each other because they help each other out a lot.
Okay.
And that just seems to happen, not all the time, but I see them outside and they just seem completely lost and trapped by their own patterns of behaviour, which inevitably leads them back in. So but it does seem to be that, within the constraints of the prison, where they're just basically given a routine, they can become more free in working within that.
So it doesn't have to be voluntary, this restriction then? Involuntary restriction still works.
Yeah. When I was stuck in bed for weeks on end, then
Pardon?
When I was stuck in bed for weeks on end, so it wasn't through choice. But yeah, it kind of felt more free than it would do to be charging around my day-to-day life when they give a load of space. So I couldn't read books, couldn't watch TV, couldn't do anything there.
Right.
And yeah, it had the same sort of effect of simplifying life.
So we need penitentiary again.
We do. to call them monasteries. So you don't have arrows. We need to have roads with arrows on.
Well, we do the porridge anyway.
We do we do plenty of porridge. Okay. I'm not going to read you that, it's complicated. Sorry, not only is it complicated, but I didn't understand it, so that's if anybody's got anything to say, great. I'd really like to hear, otherwise we'll just knock it on the head.
I would like to say something. I was thinking whether in the middle between restraint and freedom is resilience.
Resilience, yeah.
Because that's just from my perspective, like sitting and sometimes or often not wanting what is there to be there, but staying seated in a way that makes me more resilient, I think, to just like I have to then feel the feelings or whatever is there, and I think out of that for me comes more freedom then, because then I can face more feelings because I feel more comfortable with them. I know them and I became more resilient. So for me it's a bit of process of resilience too.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah. When we sit on the mat, we are locked in, aren't we? We're locked in for a fixed period of time, physically and so we do need resilience to not get up and leave. And there's not much in life that requires that kind of decision making, is there? Yeah. Usually you can just go. Yeah. Thank you.
It's one of the great things I think about Sangha is it supports that resilience. Kind of sitting here, it feels a bit easier to stay with stuff because everyone's staying with stuff together.
Yeah.
Rather than everyone pushing at home.
Yeah.
Temptation can be, I finished 5 minutes early, extra cup of coffee, whatever. But sitting here, because of the voluntary restriction that we
choose together, Yeah.
That makes it more bearable to sit.
For sure.
To stay.
Are we done? Okay. Thank you. Thanks everyone.